Hello, everyone. Tonight we begin with the smell of smoke clinging to thatched rooftops, the sharp clink of a blacksmith's hammer echoing through narrow alleys, and the sticky squish of something unnameable underfoot. We're stepping into a medieval town, not the romantic kind with fairy tale castles and noble quests, but the real kind. A place so dense, so foul, and so unrelenting that once you enter, you might not make it back out. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I'm doing here. And tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. It's always a joy to see this sleepy little community stretch across time zones and continents. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a small fan for that soft background hum, and let's begin tonight's journey together. Imagine a town where every street is a gamble. You're not walking, you're dodging. Dodging chamber pots dumped from windows, dodging stray chickens, dodging merchants shouting at you to buy eels that look like they died twice. This is the world of Thomas Brewer, a bowyer in the heart of 13th century England. He wakes before the sun even thinks about rising, not because he's eager, but because survival demands punctuality. His house, or more accurately, his wooden cube, is wedged between two others like a missing tooth filled in with splinters. The ceiling is low, the windows are non-existent, and the concept of indoors is mostly theoretical. Smoke from last night's fire still hangs in the air like a judgment. The scent is a strong blend of burnt meat, old glue, and despair. Charming. Inside this single-room masterpiece of medieval architecture lives Thomas, his wife Agnes, and their three children, Alice, Martha, and little Henry, who are somehow both sick and sticky at all times. Privacy is not a concept. They sleep, eat, and work in the same square of floor, each night a game of who's hogging the straw. Furniture, there's a bench, maybe, if no one's using it to dry a boot. The walls sweat in summer and shiver in winter. The floor is dirt, sometimes dry, sometimes mysteriously damp. You don't ask why. The rushes scattered across it were fresh last festival season and now serve mostly as a breeding ground for fleas and a carpet of memories you'd rather forget. There's a reason people didn't live long back then. It's because their floors were actively plotting against them. As the morning light creeps in through a gap in the wooden slats, the sounds of the town begin to stir. Bells toll not in harmony but in protest, as if the town itself is reluctantly waking up. Outside, hooves clatter, dogs bark, and someone, somewhere, has already started yelling. Probably about turnips. Thomas doesn't get breakfast. He gets pottage. It's been boiling for days, maybe weeks. An eternal stew of barley, roots, and unfulfilled dreams. He ladles it into bowls made of wood and wishes briefly for anything with flavor. Pepper? That costs more than his house. Meat? Only on feast days, and only if a pig happens to die of natural causes near the church. This morning, like every morning, he moves aside a pile of wood shavings and starts his work, crafting bows from yew and ash, binding them with sinew, sealing them with glue that smells like boiled regret. His fingers are calloused, his back aches, and he has precisely zero options. The guild controls everything. Prices, materials, who gets to sell where and when. One wrong move, and he's out. And out means homeless. And homeless in this town means dead by Friday. In the back corner, Agnes tends the hearth while coughing into a cloth that's more whole than fabric. She's as worn as the stone she stirs her pot on. The children, already awake, scratch their bites and cough like tiny, plague-ridden chimneys. Henry's wheeze has a rhythm to it now, a sort of sad percussion that accompanies the creaking of the house. Alice and Martha bicker over a scrap of cloth pretending to be a doll. Despite the chaos, Thomas finds a strange peace in routine. Misery, when consistent, becomes almost bearable. Almost. He dreams sometimes of a stone house, solid warm, with maybe a second room, but dreams, like cheese, are reserved for nobles and the very lucky. The noise outside grows louder. A cart passes, wheels screeching. Someone hurls insults at a goose. A tax collector's assistant makes his way down the lane, tallying doors and eyeing chimneys. Thomas glances at the tiny pile of coins hidden in the corner and calculates how much he could bribe the man to keep walking. Probably not enough. Still, there are moments, tiny, stolen seconds that remind him why he keeps going. A touch from Agnes when the kids are asleep. A walk to the riverbank as the sun sets and the town finally, mercifully, goes quiet. There, beside the twinkling water, they breathe. just for a moment. Then back to the dirt, the glue, and the grind. This, then, is Thomas's world. Cramped, foul, infested. But he holds it together with threadbare hope and boiled glue. And as he bends over his workbench, listening to Henry's cough and the distant cry of the bell, he counts himself lucky. After all, it could always be worse. And tomorrow, it probably will be. The sun hasn't properly risen yet, but already the town breathes with the heavy, sour breath of old smoke and older sewage. If you stand in the center of the muddy main road and take a deep inhale, please don't, you'll catch notes of rotting offal, wet straw, burning tallow, and just the faintest hint of horse panic. It's not exactly Paris in spring, but it is consistent. Outside the Brewer home, Thomas squints at the sky. It's gray as always, not stormy, not clear, just vaguely threatening, like it hasn't made up its mind whether to spit on you or ignore you entirely. He tugs his rough cloak tighter around his shoulders. It smells like goat and damp wool, because it is made of goat and damp wool. Agnes stitched it from scraps last winter, and it's held together by faith, twine, and one very stubborn wooden button. He steps carefully into the street. The ground squelches. It always squelches. Rain has seeped through the soil, through the cracks in the timbered buildings, through your sense of optimism. Each step is a conversation with the earth that ends in the phrase, "You really should have worn better shoes." Not that Thomas has another pair. His boots are more whole than leather, lovingly patched with a bit of fish skin and desperate prayer. Thomas isn't heading to a shop because he doesn't have one. He works from home being a generous term for a one-room furnace with children in it. His tools and materials are stored in the front half of the house, where daylight seeps through cracks in the wooden planks. There's no official division between workplace and living space, just a general agreement among the family that if you step on Dad's glue pot, you lose breakfast privileges. Inside, the smell of boiling pottage still clings to the walls. Agnes is stirring the pot again, but not because anything needs to be done to it. It's the same stew from 3 nights ago. Stirring just gives the illusion of activity. It's a performance. The kids watch her as if something new might appear in the broth, like meat or hope. It won't. Alice, the eldest daughter at 10, sits near the hearth plucking lice from her little brother's scalp. It's a bonding activity, really. In a place with no entertainment, grooming your sibling like a half-hearted monkey is how you say, "I love you, and I don't want your parasites to migrate." Martha hums softly to herself while hugging a doll made from bundled rags. Its face is drawn with charcoal and looks perpetually surprised, which honestly fits the general mood of the household. Little Henry, age 5, is propped up near the fire. His cough rattles through the room like an old cart over cobblestones. It's a wet, hacking noise that always makes Thomas wince. They call it a chest cold because saying consumption out loud feels like an invitation. Agnes wraps him in the thickest blanket they own, which smells faintly of sour milk and always feels slightly damp, no matter how long it hangs near the hearth. The fire crackles under the cooking pot, sending up weak fingers of heat and thick tendrils of smoke. They have no chimney. The smoke just hangs around the room until it finds the door or gives up. Every surface in the house has a light coating of soot, including the sleeping mats, the clothes, the children, and yes, the food. Everything tastes slightly of campfire and unwashed regret. Thomas settles into his work area. A long U-stave waits for him on the bench. It's been soaking for a week, bending gently under a corded weight to keep it from warping. His knives are arranged carefully nearby, each one duller than it should be, but still serviceable. He starts to shave the wood, each stroke releasing a sweet, sharp scent that briefly cuts through the grime of the room. Crafting a bow is a meditative act, if you ignore the coughing, the yelling outside, and the neighbor's chicken that keeps sneaking in to lay eggs under the workbench. Thomas works slowly, methodically, his hands steady despite the chill in the air. His fingers are numb at the tips, cold or nerve damage, who knows, but they remember what they're supposed to do. That's enough. Agnes crouches beside him. "We need more bread," she says quietly, not because it's a secret, but because everything is quieter in the morning. It's a ritual, like prayer or shivering. Thomas nods. "I'll check the bakehouse later." Bread is a luxury, especially the kind that doesn't double as a blunt weapon. Their last loaf could have been used to patch the wall. The baker down the lane, old Mistress Godwin, sells her bread hard as stone and flavored with regret, but at least it's affordable. Most of the time, suddenly a shout outside. Fire! Fire at the tannery! Thomas's head snaps up. Fires are not rare in this town. Buildings are wooden, roofs are thatch, and everything is constantly a little too dry or a little too flammable. The tannery, unfortunately, is only 4 houses down. He rushes outside. Smoke is already curling upward, a greasy black column that stings the eyes and coats the lungs. People are running, yelling, hauling buckets of water drawn from a well that mostly just smells like despair. The tannery is a nightmare, even without flames. The smell alone, boiled urine, rotting hides, and that one unidentifiable stench that lingers in your soul is enough to drop a grown man. Now, with fire, it's an olfactory apocalypse. Neighbors form a sloppy bucket line, shouting over one another, most of them barefoot and angry. Thomas joins them, heaving water at the inferno that is now joyfully climbing the sides of the tannery like it's been waiting for this moment all year. The fire cracks, roars, and spits. Roof beams fall, someone screams. After what feels like hours, the fire is reduced to smoldering ash and charred resentment. The tannery is half gone, the street is soaked, people cough and limp away, covered in soot and defeat. Thomas returns home, clothes damp, boots squelching. Agnes looks up as he enters. No words are needed. Fires are part of life here, like hunger or damp socks. He sits beside the hearth and Alice silently hands him a bowl of pottage. It's lukewarm and now includes a fleck of ash. He eats it anyway. There's a knock at the door, sharp, official. Agnes stiffens. It's the tax collector, and so the day continues. The knock comes again, short, firm, like it has somewhere else to be. Agnes doesn't move, Thomas doesn't move. Even little Henry, swaddled in his blanket and phlegm, holds his cough. That knock carries the kind of weight that suggests it could tax the air in your lungs if given half the chance. Outside the door stands a man known only as Master Croft, the local tax collector and unofficially the town's leading source of collective indigestion. He's not imposing in stature, but he wears authority like a second cloak, thick, scratchy, and always smelling faintly of ink and pork. Behind him trails a boy with a ledger that looks heavier than his education. Thomas opens the door slowly, attempting the medieval version of, maybe if I look confused, they'll leave. Good morning, Master Croft says without warmth. Household of Thomas Brewer? Thomas, still holding a bowl of lukewarm despair, nods. Aye. Croft steps inside without being invited. This is not a society where boundaries are respected, unless the boundary is a moat and you're paying guards. The boy with the ledger stands awkwardly in the doorway, already scribbling something. Probably, door creaks too loudly, 1 groat fine. The taxman's eyes scan the room. He sees the soot-streaked walls, the lice-expressed children, the pot that smells like it's been through 7 stages of grief. He doesn't flinch. He's seen worse. He is worse. We are conducting a hearth count, Croft says, gesturing at the fire pit with a stick as if it might attack. For warmth, for work, for sustenance, all require fuel. Fuel requires tax. You understand. Thomas resists the urge to say anything sarcastic. He understands, all right? He understands that no matter how little you have, someone will always find a way to pretend it's taxable. How many employed in this house? Croft continues, walking the perimeter of the room with all the reverence of someone inspecting turnips. Just me, Thomas says. I craft bows for the guild. Guild certified? Apprentice to Master Dunning. I pay his dues. Children? Croft looks at Henry, then at the girls. 3, Agnes replies, voice tight. Any livestock? We had a hen, Thomas offers. It died, unexpectedly, in soup. Croft doesn't laugh. He never laughs. He marks something in the ledger. He pauses at the workbench, inspecting the yew stave Thomas had been shaping that morning. His fingers hover over it like he's considering taking it as evidence of income. Instead, he just tuts. You'll owe 1 groat for firewood, 2 groats for trade privilege, and half a groat for occupying land of the Earl, payable within 7 days or subject to collection. Thomas's face remains still, but inside his stomach drops faster than a spoiled turnip from a second-story window. 7 days, Croft repeats. Don't make me return. The taxman exits. The ledger boy glances at Henry with something like pity. Then the door closes and silence reclaims the room. Thomas stares at the door for a long time, bowl still in hand. No one speaks. Then, as if on cue, the pottage lets out a single resentful bubble. Agnes sits beside him. "We have 2 groats," she says softly, "and a button that might be silver. If we squint." Thomas doesn't reply. He knows what's coming. It's the same every season. Work harder. Eat less. Hope the guild doesn't raise dues again. Hope the baker accepts patchy favors in place of coin. Hope the taxman gets gout. He finishes his pottage, scraping the sides with a wooden spoon like he's hunting for moral support. Outside, the town continues, as it always does, loudly, damply, and with a sense of impending structural failure. A dog barks, a pig escapes something, and the church bell clangs as if it owes someone money. But inside this house, it's quieter now. Thomas moves back to the bench and picks up his tools. Work must go on. Hope, while not edible, is sometimes all that's left. Later that day, after the sun has sulked across the sky and begun its descent into medieval retirement, Thomas slips out for a walk. Not far, just down to the river. The Thames, sluggish and brown, reflects the evening light like it's trying to be poetic, but keeps forgetting the words. It smells faintly of fish, sweat, and urban trauma. But it's quiet here, almost peaceful. He walks slowly, letting the chill of dusk settle into his bones. Not because he enjoys the cold, but because it's the only thing that doesn't cost anything. Agnes meets him on the path. She's brought a crust of bread they were saving for Sunday. They split it without speaking. The bread is tough enough to earn a name, but they chew it gratefully. They stand together, shoulder to shoulder, watching the sky turn soft and purplish. For a brief moment, it doesn't feel like poverty. It feels like survival. A fish jumps, or possibly dies midair. Hard to tell. Agnes leans into him. "Do you remember when we thought this would be temporary?" she asks. Thomas nods. They both know the answer. Everything is temporary, except taxes, cold feet, and the feeling that the pottage might outlive them all. Back at home, the children are asleep, tangled together in a pile of limbs and lice. The fire is low, but still glowing. Henry's cough is softer now, at least for tonight. Thomas lies beside Agnes, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if he can trade sleep for coin. He can't. But he dreams anyway. Not of castles or feasts or noble deeds. He dreams of boots without holes, blankets that don't itch, and a morning where no one knocks. The morning arrives not with the gentle warmth of dawn, but with the shrill shriek of the neighbor's rooster, an animal that clearly skipped charm school and now lives purely out of spite. Its crow slices through the foggy air like a rusty blade through wet wool. Agnes groans softly beside Thomas, pulling their shared blanket, if a blanket that smells like mildew and regret counts, up to her nose. Thomas blinks. The ceiling above is unchanged, wooden beams blackened by years of smoke, with cobwebs delicately strung between them like nature's failed attempt at interior design. Somewhere in the corner, a spider conducts its business with quiet professionalism. Honestly, it might be the most productive member of the household. A soft rustle alerts him that Henry's already awake. The child lies staring at the roof, eyes watery, nose crusted, chest gently rising under layers of patchy fabric. His cough comes not in a dramatic burst, but in a tired little wheeze, like his lungs are trying to avoid drawing attention. Thomas strokes his head gently, careful not to touch the itchy red bumps that have taken up permanent residence along his scalp. "Didn't cough too much last night," Agnes whispers. Thomas nods, unsure if that's a good sign or just another trick the illness is playing. The girls are still asleep, Alice tangled in a wool tunic she uses as a blanket, and Martha curled into herself like a defensive hedgehog. Their hair is a mess of tangles and straw, and each of them has managed to claim a sock as a pillow. It's not even their sock. It might not be anyone's anymore. Outside, the street begins to stir, loudly. A cart rumbles past, its wheels complaining with every rotation. Someone's yelling about spoiled fish. A woman is loudly negotiating over a goose that clearly doesn't want to be bartered. Church bells clang with the subtlety of a frying pan to the face. Another normal morning. Thomas rises. His joints protest. Knees crack, back seizes. He's 41, but his bones whisper rumors of someone much older. He pulls on his work tunic, a stiff, sour-smelling garment that has more stains than buttons, and begins his ritual. Flex the hands, check the glue pot, breathe in the scent of damp wood and resignation. Today's job is urgent. He's been commissioned, unofficially, of course, to craft 3 bow staves for a minor knight's household. Nothing noble, just a retainer who needs backup weapons in case the next village throws a fit. The pay? 1 silver penny per bow. Barely enough to buy salt, but enough maybe to satisfy Master Croft's appetite for coin. Agnes hands him a bit of dried apple stolen from the bottom of the pantry. It's tough as leather, tastes like smoke, and is vaguely apple adjacent. He eats it anyway. A sudden knock, soft, not the taxman, comes at the door. Thomas opens it cautiously. It's Elias, a boy of about 12 from 2 doors down. His face is pale, his expression anxious. He shifts from to foot like his boots are on fire. They might be. Medieval footwear has no chill. "Mr. Brewer," he says, "it's my father." Thomas knows Elias's father, John the dyer, a man with red-stained hands and a temper to match. He makes dyes for fabric, mostly yellows and reds, but sometimes purple if someone's feeling extravagant. He's also been coughing for weeks. "He's not waking up," Elias whispers. Thomas doesn't hesitate. He follows the boy. The dyer's home is barely more than a shack. Inside, the air is thick and sour, like boiled onions mixed with damp wool and failure. John lies on a mat in the corner, unmoving, face pale, mouth slightly open. His chest does not rise. Agnes arrives moments later, summoned silently by the panic in Elias's voice. She kneels beside John and places a hand on his forehead. Her expression hardens. She doesn't need to say anything. The room knows. Death has a way of making itself loud, even in silence. The town has no doctor. There's a midwife who knows herbs and a priest who knows last rites. Neither of them is particularly helpful in moments like this. By mid-morning, word has spread. Neighbors murmur, voices low, eyes darting. Some say fever, others say curse. One claims to have seen a rat the size of a goose, which somehow feels relevant. Thomas helps Elias and his mother, Maud, prepare the body. There is no funeral home, no embalming, just a linen shroud, a wooden cart, and a shallow grave near the churchyard. The priest arrives eventually, robes wrinkled, breath thick with wine. He mumbles a blessing, mispronounces John's name, and leaves. The burial is quick. The ground is hard. The shovel is dull. No one cries loudly. They can't afford to. Later that afternoon, Thomas returns home. He doesn't speak for a while. Agnes doesn't push. She just hands him the glue pot and gently nudges him toward the workbench. "Still got to finish," she says. He nods, because of course he does. The world doesn't stop for grief here. It barely pauses for breath. That night, as the fire sputters and the wind scratches at the door, Thomas lies awake beside Agnes. He listens to Henry's breath, to the creak of wood, to the soft shifting of straw beneath his head. The dyer is gone, just like that. A cough, a fever, a silence. Thomas doesn't ask, "What if I'm next?" He just pulls the blanket tighter and closes his eyes. Because in this world, rest is rare, and sleep is the only mercy you don't have to pay for. The wind howls through the slats of the Brewer household, squeezing itself through the gaps like an uninvited spirit. It flutters the rushes on the floor, tickles the last ember in the hearth, and carries with it the faint, sour scent of the tannery ruins still smoldering 2 streets down. The fire has been out for hours, but its memory clings to the town like soot on a wet sleeve. Thomas wakes to the cold first, then to the sound of Agnes already moving about, quietly so as not to wake the children, but every creak of the floorboards still sounds like judgment. She kneels by the hearth, prodding at yesterday's ash with a stick that has seen more action than most nights. There's nothing left to coax, just gray dust and one stubborn coal that glows in protest. "We'll need more fuel," she says softly, not looking up. Thomas rubs his eyes. "We'll need more everything." There's a quiet agreement in the air. Today must be productive. The tax deadline looms like an executioner at a feast. If they can finish the bow staves and deliver them on time, they might have just enough to pay Master Croft. If not, well, medieval debt collection is never subtle. He gets to work, hands rough and numb from the cold. The yew stave resists the knife at first, but slowly gives in with each careful pass. The wood sings under his blade, a soft, fibrous hiss that's almost musical if you forget the context. He works methodically. Every inch of smooth curve is one step closer to coin and one step further from Croft's reappearance. Henry stirs, coughing in short, sharp bursts. Martha groans and pulls the blanket over her head. Alice sits up, blinking. Her hair looks like it fought a hedgehog and lost. Agnes ladles out the breakfast. The pottage has officially entered its 7th day. It has reached a consistency and flavor profile best described as committed. No one complains. Complaining uses calories. Is it different today? Alice asks, poking at her bowl. Agnes shrugs. I added onion peel. A feast, Martha deadpans, spooning the mixture into her mouth with the speed of someone trying not to taste it. After breakfast, Thomas prepares to deliver the bows. He wraps them in cloth and secures the bundle with a bit of twine saved from a previous batch of firewood. It's not elegant, but nothing in this life is. He checks his boots. Still terrible. Checks the weather. Also terrible. Then he heads out. The streets are slick with frozen mud, footprints fill with slush. The market smells worse than usual, something between dead eel and moral decay. He walks past the fishmonger who is shouting about three-eyed carp, past the herbalist with her wilted bundles, past a group of children chasing a chicken like it owes them money. He reaches the small manor house near the edge of town. It's not grand, but compared to his home, it may as well be a palace. The guard at the door eyes him suspiciously. Business? Delivery, Thomas replies, holding up the bundle. After a long pause and a grunt that might have been approval, the guard steps aside. Thomas is led through a cramped hall filled with half-polished armor and a tapestry so moldy it's practically a fungus. In a side chamber sits Sir Aldrich, a knight of modest means and even more modest manners. Sir Aldrich is examining a pile of boots, none of which match. He looks up. You brewer? Aye, sir. Aldrich unties the bundle with the delicacy of a man used to breaking things. He holds each bough up to the light, testing the flex, the grain, the craftsmanship. For a moment, Thomas is sure the man's going to claim the bows are substandard just to avoid paying. But finally, Aldrich grunts again. Acceptable for a peasant. He tosses a small cloth pouch onto the table. It lands with a thunk. The sound of money, light money. Thomas picks it up, nods, and says nothing. Words are expensive, and dignity isn't legal tender. He walks back home slowly, clutching the pouch like it might sprout wings and escape. Inside, 5 silver pennies. Enough to pay the tax, maybe get bread, and if they're reckless, a bit of cheese. When he opens the door, Agnes looks up. He says nothing, just places the pouch on the table. She opens it, counts silently, and allows herself the rare luxury of a small smile. We'll manage. They all sit down together that night, not for a celebration. There's no wine, no feast, no dancing rats in tunics, but simply to rest. Thomas pulls the girls close, wraps Henry in another layer of cloth, and leans back. Outside, the wind continues to claw at the shutters, and the sky darkens into another long medieval night. But inside, for now, they are warm, they are fed, and they are not yet broken. The sky the next morning is the color of old porridge, thick, dull, and vaguely menacing. A low mist clings to the rooftops like the town itself is too tired to rise. The cold has teeth today and it bites without warning. Every surface seems damp. Every breath lingers like an unpaid debt. Inside the Brewer home, Agnes is already awake, coaxing what little heat she can from the hearth. The children remain bundled in their sleep pile, a tangle of limbs and wool and lice, but their breathing is even. Henry, for once, sleeps without coughing. A small victory, the kind that counts. Thomas wakes slowly, not because he's rested, but because his body has officially protested getting up with every known joint. He rolls onto his side and winces as his shoulder crackles like a poorly bound book. His hand instinctively reaches for the floor, touching the edge of a wooden bowl they forgot to put away last night. It's empty, but carries the scent of ashes and thin broth, essentially the same smell that now defines their home. Wind's worse today, Agnes says as he rises. Thomas nods. Roofs will lose their thatch again. Agnes shrugs. It was barely hanging on. He steps outside, the door creaking in defiance. The street looks like someone tried to wash it but gave up halfway. Mud, manure, straw, and sadness mix in equal parts beneath his boots. A pig trots past him confidently, carrying in its wake a collection of damp children. No one questions the pig's authority. Today, it is clearly in charge. Thomas isn't going to the market. He's heading somewhere far less cheerful, the edge of town near the old stone wall, where a monastery clings to the earth like a barnacle on a dying ship. It's not that he's suddenly decided to find religion, but word has spread that the monks are handing out bread. Free bread, which is, in this world, just slightly less miraculous than resurrection. The monastery is quiet, not wholly quiet, more like exhausted, drafty quiet. The stone walls are damp. Moss grows in places no one has time to scrape. A few thin-robed monks shuffle about the courtyard, each looking like a ghost with a schedule. He approaches a small wooden door set into the side of the refectory. A bored-looking novice peers out. Alms? Thomas asks simply. The novice eyes him. Name? Thomas Brewer. The boy checks a list nailed beside the door. You're not on the list. I wasn't yesterday either. There's a pause. Then the boy sighs and ducks inside. A moment later, he returns with a lump of something vaguely bread-shaped. It's grayish, slightly damp, and smells faintly of turnip. Thomas takes it gratefully. God bless you. The boy snorts. He's not on the list either. Back at home, Agnes divides the loaf with surgical precision. Each child gets a hunk. No one complains. Even Henry, who has trouble chewing, gnaws determinedly like a squirrel with a mission. Martha smears hers with a bit of tallow. Alice tries to toast hers over the fire, but mostly just sets it ablaze. Fire makes it better, she insists, mouth full of carbon. Agnes takes her share last. She always does. Thomas eats his slowly. It's chewy, sour, and still better than the seventh-day pottage. After the meal, he returns to the workshop corner. There's no commission today, no deadline. Just a pile of wood shavings and a dull knife. He considers carving something small, just to keep his hands busy. But before he can begin, there's another knock at the door. This one is soft, hesitant. He opens it to find a man dressed in coarse robes. Not a monk, but close. A messenger, maybe. He holds a letter, sealed with wax. Thomas Brewer? He asks. Thomas nods. From the guild. Thomas's stomach sinks. Guild letters are rarely good news. Usually they fall into three categories: dues, rules, or punishment. He breaks the seal with a calloused thumb. The parchment is stiff, the handwriting neat and cold. To Thomas Brewer, Bowyer of Low Quarter, you are hereby summoned to attend the quarterly guild hearing on St. Cuthbert's Day. Attendance is mandatory. Failure to appear shall result in forfeiture of standing, forfeiture of apprenticeships, if any, and potential fines not exceeding 10 silver pennies. Matters to be addressed include improper tool certification, unsanctioned trade, and question of quality regarding recent deliveries. Signed, Guild Warden Emery Graham Thomas reads it again, and again. Agnes watches him. What is it? She asks. He hands her the letter. Her face tightens with every line. They're accusing you? I don't know, he mutters. Maybe it's just procedure. Agnes doesn't believe that. Neither does he. Did Aldrich complain? She asks. He paid you, didn't he? He paid me, Thomas says, but maybe not gladly. Alice peers up from the corner. Are you in trouble, Papa? Thomas forces a smile. Not yet. That night he doesn't sleep. Not truly. He lies in the dark, listening to the wind scrape against the wood, and wonders how many ways a man can lose everything without dying. The next morning, he'll rise. He'll dress. He'll go to the guild hall and sit in a room full of men who think his work is a favor to him. But for now, he lies still, listening, breathing, waiting. St. Cuthbert's Day arrives without ceremony. No music, no flags, no cake, just fog, cold, and the unmistakable taste of dread. The streets are quieter this morning. Even the chickens seem subdued, as if they, too, understand that the guild is meeting today and it's best not to be seen or heard or, God forbid, questioned about permits. Thomas stands outside the guild hall in a tunic that's been patched more times than it's been washed. His hands twitch slightly at his sides, not from fear exactly, but from the sense that he's about to walk into a room where no one is truly listening, and yet everything he says will be used against him. The guild hall itself is a squat stone building that tries very hard to look important. It has a wooden sign above the door that reads, Worshipful Company of Bowyers, though most in the town have a different name for it, the place where dreams go to get taxed. Inside, the room is warm, filled with bodies and the low rumble of conversations, half in whispers, half in sighs. A large table sits at the far end, behind which 3 men in heavy robes preside like judges at a competition where no one wants to win. In the middle sits Warden Emery Greyhand, a man whose expression rarely changes and whose hands are rumored to be softer than any bow he's ever taxed. Beside him, 2 other guild officials, one who always seems to be falling asleep and one who always looks like he's tasting something sour. Thomas steps forward when called, bowing stiffly. He doesn't expect warmth. He certainly doesn't expect fairness. Thomas Brewer, Greyhand begins without looking up. You stand before the guild on matters of conduct and quality. Thomas says nothing. That part wasn't a question. Greyhand lifts a scroll with theatrical slowness. A complaint has been filed regarding your most recent batch of bow staves delivered to the household of Sir Aldrich. Thomas's throat tightens. Specifically, Greyhand continues, one stave was found to be warped, another had a fracture near the grip. Sir Aldrich's man claims it broke upon stringing. I inspected each one, Thomas says, his voice level. There were no fractures when they left my hands. Greyhand finally looks up. Then perhaps your workshop has become less reliable? That word, reliable, hangs in the air like smoke from bad kindling. Thomas keeps his voice calm. I've used the same tools, the same wood, the same care as always. If the staves were damaged, it happened after delivery. Do you have proof of that? Asks the sour-faced official. Thomas suppresses a bitter laugh. Proof? This isn't a world of written receipts and signed affidavits. It's a world of power and who holds it. No, sir, he says. Only my word. Greyhand places the scroll down and folds his hands. Your word is worth something, Brewer, but not everything. A pause. Then, the guild will not remove your license. However, a fine shall be levied, 3 silver pennies to be paid within a fortnight. Thomas doesn't move. 3 pennies. It's not ruinous, but it's enough to hurt. Enough to make him choose between bread and candles, between glue for his bows and cloth for Henry's feet. You may go, Greyhand says, already looking at the next scroll. Thomas bows again, turns and walks out, back into the cold. Back into the fog. Agnes doesn't flinch when he tells her. She simply nods and starts calculating aloud. We can stretch the flour if we use more broth. The girls can go without boots for another month. I'll cut Henry's tunic down from your old cloak. Thomas says nothing. He just sits at the bench and stares at his tools. His hands rest on the knife's handle, but they don't move. They're tired. He's tired. That night, as the family huddles near the hearth, the silence feels heavier than usual. No one wants to speak of fines or warps or what a silver penny buy. Alice is the one who breaks the quiet. Papa, will I be a bowyer too? Thomas looks at her. She's 10. Her hands are small but already scarred from helping in the workshop. Her eyes are bright, too bright for this house. If you want to be, he says. She nods. I'll make better bows, no warps. He smiles, barely. See that you do. Later, as the fire dwindles to a faint glow, Agnes wraps herself in her shawl and stares into the embers. They're squeezing us, Thomas, she says softly. Every month, a little more. I know. If it keeps going, he places a hand on hers. We'll manage. Because what else can you say? In this world, hope isn't grand. It's not noble, it's not inspiring, it's just stubborn. And tonight, that will have to be enough. The next morning arrives with the urgency of a dull headache. A weak sun tries to push through the mist, but mostly just gives up and sulks behind the clouds. The Brewer family begins their day not with songbirds or sunshine, but with the now familiar chorus of children scratching, someone coughing, and Agnes muttering about the fire being completely dead again. There is no wood left. The last scrap was burned 2 nights ago, and since then they've been relying on bits of straw, old fabric, and possibly one shoe no one has confessed to missing. Thomas pulls on his boots, if one can still call them that, and winces. There's more hole than soul, and every step feels like a suggestion rather than a commitment. Still, he has work to do. Or rather, he hopes someone will have work for him to do. I'll check with Master Dunning, he says, wrapping his cloak around his shoulders. Maybe he's got orders. Agnes doesn't say don't get your hopes up, but the silence between them does. Master Dunning's workshop is larger than Thomas's entire house. It stands proudly on the main road, its sign freshly painted, the shutters clean. Inside, apprentices bustle like anxious bees, and the air smells of sawdust, glue, and smugness. Thomas finds Dunning hunched over a table, examining a longbow as if it might bite him. Brewer, he grunts without looking up. Didn't expect you. Looking for work, Thomas says. Any contracts? Dunning finally glances up, his face creased with experience and mild disdain. Got one, he says. For Lord Cranwell's retinue, needs 6 bows by next month. Thomas feels a flicker of hope. I can take half that load, he offers. Dunning snorts. You? After Aldrich's complaint? Thomas stiffens. The bows weren't faulty. Doesn't matter, Dunning says, turning back to the table. Matters what people think. Lord Cranwell doesn't want rumors. He wants perfect. I can make perfect. Another grunt. Then prove it. 1 bow. Best you've ever made. I'll inspect it myself. If it's good enough, you get the job. If not, Dunning shrugs. Don't come back. It's not an offer. It's a challenge. Thomas nods. You'll have it. He leaves the workshop with a piece of yew and a mountain of pressure, his fingers already twitch, shaping the bow in his mind. He doesn't just want this job, he needs it. It's the difference between surviving and slipping. Back home, he clears his workspace like a soldier preparing for battle. Agnes watches silently. She knows that look, tight jaw, focused eyes, breath held somewhere in the ribs. He begins. Every stroke of the knife is deliberate. The wood resists at first, but eventually yields, curling away in soft, pale ribbons. The yew is good, sturdy, even-grained, blessedly free of knots. His hands remember the rhythm. Shape, flex, check, breathe. Henry coughs. Martha drops something. The neighbor's goat begins screaming, possibly at God. But Thomas doesn't look up. Hours pass. The children eat quietly, then nap. Agnes sews by the fire, darning socks with a concentration that borders on vengeance. By nightfall, the bow takes form. It's beautiful, not in the way nobles describe art, but in the way a thing that works exactly as it should can be. Balanced, smooth, flexible without breaking. A weapon, yes, but also a promise. Thomas rubs oil into the wood, his fingers moving with reverence. When he finishes, he holds it up to the firelight. It gleams. Even Agnes pauses. She starts. Enough? He asks. She nods. More than. He doesn't sleep much. Too nervous, too full of thoughts that don't end. What if Dunning refuses anyway? What if the grain has a flaw he missed? What if this bow's best work simply isn't enough? At dawn, he wraps the bow carefully in linen and makes his way back to the workshop. The streets are empty, silent except for the crunch of frost beneath his feet. Dunning greets him with a grunt and gestures to the bench. Thomas unwraps the bow slowly, like a priest revealing a relic. Dunning picks it up, turns it over, bends it gently. He checks the grain, the tiller, the knock. For a long time, he says nothing. Then, "This is good," Thomas exhales. "It's better than good," Dunning adds, reluctantly. "You get 3 bows. Start tomorrow. Don't make me regret it." "I won't," Thomas says, voice hoarse. As he turns to leave, Dunning calls after him. "Brewer?" "I? You might not be popular, but you're still a damn fine bowyer." Outside, the frost has melted. The sun, miraculously, breaks through the clouds for a few brief minutes. Thomas pulls his cloak tighter and walks home, not quickly, but not slowly either. When he opens the door, Agnes looks up from the fire. "Well?" she asks. He smiles. 3 bows. She smiles back. "We'll eat well this week. Maybe even bread that doesn't crumble." Henry coughs. Alice rolls her eyes. Martha is still asleep with her doll over her face. But in this moment, in this quiet, smoky little house, hope feels real, even if just for today. 3 bows in 7 days. That's the job. That's the challenge. That's the entire future of the Brewer household tied up in a neat little bundle of yew, glue, and back pain. Thomas wastes no time. The moment he sets foot back home, he's already at the workbench, sleeves rolled, knife in hand, and a look on his face usually reserved for men marching to battle or attempting to explain taxes. Pez. He chooses his wood carefully, each stave selected with the tenderness of a midwife delivering bad news gently. Agnes knows better than to interrupt him once he's in this state. She simply places a bowl of thin broth beside him around midday and another near dusk. He drinks them both without looking up, without commenting on the fact that they taste faintly of despair and burnt onion peel. The children, sensing that the air is heavier than usual, busy themselves with anything that doesn't involve making noise. Alice tries to comb her hair with a fork. Martha teaches her doll how to pretend it has shoes. Henry naps, then wakes up to cough, then naps again. By the second evening, 1 bow is complete. It leans against the wall like a proud older sibling waiting to judge the next arrivals. Thomas begins on the second without so much as a pause. His hands are blistered, his back is stiff. But his eyes are alive with something close to defiance. "You're pushing too hard," Agnes says as she rubs his shoulders later that night. "If I don't," he mutters, "we'll be back where we were." She doesn't argue. She knows he's right. And she knows that when Thomas is carving bows like this, he's carving more than wood. He's carving space for them all to breathe. The 3rd day, however, does not cooperate. It starts with the roof leaking. Again. Not in a dramatic waterfall kind of way, just a slow, insidious drip that chooses the worst spot imaginable, directly onto the kindling pile they've been hoarding like treasure. Agnes finds it first. She's unusually quiet about it. Too quiet. Thomas only notices when he reaches for a bit of dry wood to heat glue and finds himself holding something best described as soggy regret. I'll fix the roof, he says, already standing. With what? Agnes asks, arms crossed. Spite. He climbs onto the roof an hour later, armed with a hammer that's more rust than metal and a handful of discarded leather scraps that might once have been part of a shoe. It's not elegant, it's not even effective, but it slows the drip to a pained gurgle, and in this world, that counts as a victory. By nightfall, the second bow is halfway done. Thomas's hands are shaking and his shoulders feel like they've been replaced with sacks of rocks. But he smiles. Not because it's easy, because it's happening. Then comes the knock. Not urgent, not angry, just odd. He opens the door to find Maud, widow of John the Dyer, standing there holding a bundle wrapped in cloth. I heard you got work, she says. You'll need glue. Thomas blinks. You have glue? John had a batch curing before he, you know? She swallows. I didn't know what to do with it, figured you might. He takes the bundle gently. Inside is a jar of thick, amber-colored glue that smells faintly of boiled hoof and sadness. This is good stuff, he says. He knew what he was doing. Maud smiles sadly. Aye, he did, when he wasn't being a bloody fool. He wants to offer her something in return. Coin? They have none. Food? Barely enough. So he just says, thank you. I'll make it count. She nods and disappears into the fog. With renewed energy and slightly better glue, Thomas finishes the second bow the next day. The third begins immediately after, this time with Agnes assisting, holding the stave while he shaves, heating the glue just so, whispering soft encouragement when he winces too hard. On the sixth day, it's done. 3 bows lined up like sentinels, smooth, flexible, deadly, beautiful in a way that only survival tools can be. He delivers them the next morning, bundled in care and wrapped against the damp. Master Dunning receives them with a grunt as always, but after inspection, he gives a rare nod of approval. These'll do, he says. You'll get paid end of week. If the Lord's man likes them, you get more. Thomas nods. He doesn't smile. He's too tired. But something in his chest unclenches. He walks home slowly, not because he's delaying, but because, for once, he can. That night, the family eats actual bread. Not boiled, not sour, not stolen. Bread, real, crusty, slightly burned on one edge, but undeniably glorious. Agnes sets the loaf down like it's a holy relic. The children devour it like it's a dream they forgot they had. Thomas watches them and thinks, we made this. Not just the bread, the moment, the possibility, the crack in the endless gray wall. And he decides that tomorrow he will sleep in, just a bit, because sometimes survival deserves a nap. The morning after the bows are delivered begins with silence, not the usual kind, broken by coughing, creaking, chickens screaming existentially in the distance, but a rare, golden silence. The kind that comes when no one is cold, no one is hungry, and no one has anywhere they urgently need to be. It is, by all medieval standards, a luxury. Thomas is the last to wake. He opens his eyes slowly, expecting the usual weight in his chest, the familiar anxiety whispering, "You're already behind." But it doesn't come. For the first time in what feels like months, he stretches without guilt. The ceiling looks less oppressive, the cracks in the wood less like fault lines. Agnes is already moving about, but with none of the rushed, frantic energy that usually defines her mornings. She's humming. A tune with no name, no structure, just something light enough to float in the air without demanding attention. The children are quietly playing near the hearth. Henry is building a fortress from firewood scraps, bless his optimism, while Alice and Martha take turns pretending the bread knife is a royal scepter. It's the first time in weeks no one has asked, "Are we eating today?" Thomas rises slowly and joins Agnes at the table. "No rush," she says, handing him a cup of something warm. It's mostly water with a hint of dried herbs, but it smells vaguely pleasant. "I know," he replies, sipping. "Feels strange," Agnes nods. "We've been running so long, I forgot what standing still felt like." Later that morning, a neighbor arrives, old Tom, who claims to be 42 but looks 60 and has a beard that suggests it might be sentient. "Brewer," he says, "heard you're working with Dunning now." Thomas nods, cautious. Praise from old Tom often precedes a request that involves hauling, fixing, or catching something that bites. "Could use your help," the man says. "My nephew's trying to learn the craft. Can't tell the difference between you and a cabbage, thought you might. Talk to him." Thomas hesitates. Teaching means time. Time means less work. But also, it means respect. A kind of standing. "I can spare an hour," he says. Old Tom grunts, which might be gratitude. Hard to tell. He leaves behind a gift, 2 onions and a suspiciously clean egg. Agnes holds the egg like it's made of silver. "We're rich," she whispers. By midday, the house smells of something cooking, a blend of onion, tallow, and crushed herbs that could pass for stew in generous lighting. Martha claims it's the best thing ever, which may be a side effect of not having tasted seasoning in a decade. Thomas heads to Old Tom's that afternoon. The nephew, Robbie, is 12, wide-eyed and already covered in wood splinters. "You ever held a draw knife before?" Thomas asks. "No," Robbie says, "but I seen one in a picture." "Right," Thomas mutters. "Let's fix that." They work for 2 hours. Thomas shows him how to read the grain, how to listen to the stave as it bends, how to feel when the wood's about to give. Robbie listens. Not perfectly, but he listens. "Think you'll make a bowyer out of me?" the boy asks. "Depends," Thomas says. "You afraid of splinters?" "No." "Then maybe." He returns home late afternoon, greeted by warmth, not from the fire, which is sputtering again, but from the way Agnes smiles when he steps in. "There's food," she says. "Real food, and I didn't have to lie to the children about what's in it." They eat together. Laugh, even. Henry manages to say a full sentence without coughing. Alice announces she's going to start writing poems. Martha insists her doll is now a duchess. After supper, Thomas and Agnes sit by the hearth, not talking, just sitting. Outside, the town is settling into sleep. The usual complaints, dogs barking, someone yelling about a missing boot, the wind trying to dismantle a thatched roof, filter through the walls like background noise. Inside, though, it's calm, safe. And when Thomas leans his head on Agnes's shoulder, she doesn't shift away. "I thought things would always feel like a struggle," he says quietly. "They probably will," she replies, "but not tonight." They stay like that a while longer, soaking in the moment like it might evaporate. Eventually, the children drift off. Then Agnes. Then, finally, Thomas closes his eyes, knowing that tomorrow will still bring bills and blisters and bureaucracy. But tonight, there is peace, and that is everything. The town awakens the next morning with a sneeze. Not a metaphor. A literal echoing sneeze from somewhere 3 houses down that sets off a chain reaction of coughing, dog barking, and what might be a very offended goose. It's spring now, technically, and with spring comes pollen, mold, and the delightful tradition of everyone becoming vaguely sick at once. Inside the Brewer household, the air is warmer than usual. A crack of sunlight squeezes its way through the warped shutters, illuminating the dust in golden beams. Agnes is up before anyone, as usual, and this time she's humming something suspiciously upbeat. Thomas stirs, stretches, and blinks at the light like it's a foreign concept. The children are still wrapped in their nest of fabric and limbs, their faces soft with sleep. Henry is snoring lightly, nose whistling through congestion, but, miracle of miracles, he hasn't coughed once this morning. Agnes hands Thomas a cup of hot water with a sprig of mint floating on top. Real mint. Where did she even find it? "Market was open early," she says. "Some traveler brought herbs down from the north." He takes a sip. "It's nothing like tea, but it smells like luxury." "How much?" he asks. "Traded a length of thread and an old buckle." Thomas raises an eyebrow. "You haggled?" "I terrified," she corrects. "The man gave me a whole handful." He chuckles. "Remind me never to cross you over herbs." By mid-morning, he's back at the workbench. There's no commission yet. Master Dunning said he'd be in touch, but Thomas isn't one to sit idle. He begins shaping a practice bow, something to train Robbie on next week. The lad has potential, but more importantly, he listens. That's rare enough. Agnes, meanwhile, is tackling what she calls the Great Wash. Sheets, tunics, and underthings are being boiled in a pot outside over a fire that smells like soap, ashes, and divine punishment. Alice helps stir, dramatically wrinkling her nose every few seconds. "It smells like someone boiled a knight's armpit," she declares. "Probably not far off," Agnes mutters. Martha is tasked with beating rugs. She takes to it with the zeal of a small, dusty executioner. In the early afternoon, a familiar voice calls from the door. "Brewer!" It's Master Dunning, looking unusually pleased and carrying a sack that clinks. Thomas steps out. "You're early," he says. "I'm generous," Dunning replies. "Cranwell's man was pleased once more in a month." Thomas's heart lifts. "How many?" 10. He exhales. "That's enough work to carry them through the season." "You'll need help," Dunning adds, eyeing him. "The boy ready?" Thomas nods. "He will be." Dunning hands over the sack. 5 silver now, more when it's done. And just like that, the world shifts again. Inside, Thomas lays the coins on the table like precious stones. The children gather around. Alice gasps. Are we rich? No, Agnes says without hesitation. We're safe. For now. Can we still be rich? Martha asks, poking a coin like it might hatch. Let's start with soap that doesn't burn your skin, Agnes says. They spend the afternoon doing nothing particularly urgent. Agnes braids Martha's hair for the first time in months. Alice reads aloud from a tattered scrap of someone's sermon, dramatically editing every line for entertainment. Henry naps in the sun like a very tiny, slightly wheezy cat. Thomas carves, not because he has to, but because he wants to. That night, they cook a stew with actual ingredients. Onion, dried peas, bits of dried meat from the market, small, chewy, but real. Agnes adds a pinch of the mysterious mint, and it transforms the pot into something magical. They eat slowly, savoring. After dinner, the girls lie on the floor and tell stories, mostly ridiculous ones about talking animals and heroic dolls. Henry contributes a plot twist involving a dragon and some cheese. Agnes leans against Thomas and says, "We're getting better at this." He nods. Feels dangerous. Hope always does. Outside, the wind has settled, the moon hangs low, casting silver light across the roof beams and the patch of earth outside where Agnes has started planting something. Maybe onions. Maybe hope. Thomas watches his children laugh, his wife smile, and his hands rest in his lap without shaking. And for once, he doesn't feel like a man scrambling to survive. He feels like a man who might, just might, be living. The dawn of this day feels different, like someone smuggled a ray of sunlight past the usual gray curtain. It's quiet at first, the kind of silence that seems to be holding its breath. Only when Thomas opens his eyes does it exhale. A gentle sigh, like the world is too tired to wake up properly, but willing to try. He lies still for a moment, letting the calm seep in. Around him, Agnes sleeps at his side, her arm draped across their shared blanket. It's small, scratchy, faded, but tonight it feels like luxury. Henry is tucked in between Alice and Martha, snoring softly, a warm bundle of fabric and hope. Their coughs are absent, their breathing smooth. They're still here. "Morning," Thomas whispers, brushing a stray tuft of hair from Agnes's forehead. She stirs in response, half awake, half dreaming. "Morning," she echoes, and then is fully awake, stretching like a cat that's found the perfect sunbeam. They sit up together, they are careful not to wake the girls, and meet eyes in the sparse light. Wordless, unhurried, present. Outside, they can hear the town stirring. Creaks, distant voices, the unmistakable sound of a boot scraping mud. But inside, for a little while, there's only them and the soft hum of family. Agnes slips out quietly and returns a moment later with a pot of hot water. The steam curls like ghosts, warming the room. Inside the pot, she's softened a stray bit of bread and added the mint again, her secret touch of comfort. They share sips in silence. Then Thomas says softly, "Today, we take care of things." Agnes nods. "Today, but not rush." He agrees. In the workshop corner, he begins shaping his layout for the new order. 10 bows in a month. It sounds simple when heard that way, but his mind knows the truth. The weight of wood, the hours bent over, the chance of rain or damage or illness creeping in to spoil everything. Still, he starts. Methodical, respectful, with quiet determination. Agnes emerges and slides into the corner behind him, offering thread, bits of cloth, a fresh scrap of leather. They don't work together often, but they don't need to announce it. They just fit around each other like worn puzzle pieces. Meanwhile, the children stir. Alice is first up. She pads in, her hair mussed and her voice soft. "Can I help?" Thomas smiles. "Could use a runner. Get more mint? Piece of wood for later? Task?" She nods fiercely. "I'll be useful." He gives her a simple scraper and a stool, and she sets to scraping glue residue off yesterday's tools. Martha follows, balancing a bowl of water to wash them. Henry toddles in last, still in small clothes, clutching a rag toy sheep. He giggles when his sister splashes water. She flicks back, and they both laugh. In this moment, their home, the small wooden cube, feels wide, alive, breathing again. Agnes calls the neighbor. They trade cheese for eggs for a handful of flour. The neighbor laughs, saying they'll collect herbs for Thomas's bows. It's commerce, yes, but wrapped in agreement and kindness. The morning unfolds like this, small practicalities carried out with careful choreography. Repairs, a broken chair leg fixed, a roof slate steadied, a hearthstone leaned gently to grind small kindling, bread scraps saved for tomorrow. Love woven through every low-stakes chore. No drama, no calamity, just the rhythms of survival done with intention. After lunch, a simple stew enhanced by herbs, the afternoon brings first sunshine since what feels like forever. The door stays open at the workshop, letting light in and dust out for once. Thomas pulls another stave from his stack. The wood feels warm, almost affectionate under his hands. He begins carving again. Alice comes to watch, leaning forward like a student attending a masterclass. Every curve, every shaving she notices. She timidly asks a question. "Why do you press so hard here?" Thomas stops and looks at his daughter, his apprentice in potential, and smiles. He shows her the grain, the natural curve, how much is too much. He teaches her as one might teach a friend rather than a pupil. She listens, focused, absorbing. Agnes sits nearby, tracing crumbs off the floor with her foot. Occasionally she looks up and gives a quiet nod of support, as if that's enough. Henry wanders in and out, hugging his toy sheep, then ear-speared with fascination at the bow. Martha cushions the wood scraps in her lap and pretends they are asleep babies, keeping them warm until father finishes them. They are all here, together. As the day wanes, Thomas stands the half-finished bow upright. He flexes it gently, testing the tension, listening for faults. It sings softly. He breathes out. At his side, Agnes packs away tools and brushes crumbs from the bench. He wipes his hands and surveys the room. Warm pine sunlight filters through dust, revealing promise. It's been a long time since this place felt more like home than a workshop against catastrophe. But today, it does. He exhales a long, low breath. He closes his eyes. Agnes touches his arm and smiles. The children file in, quiet now, dragged by dusk. Alice holds the helper stool. Henry clutches his toy. Martha hums quietly as she settles into the corner. They gather around. Thomas cups the bow in his hands and says, "Tomorrow, we carve the rest." Alice beams. Henry claps. Martha repeats the hum. Agnes steps forward, brushing a loose curl from her daughter's face, whispering, "Family project." And for a moment, the world shrinks to this little room. Its cracks and creaks and warmth shared among 5 people who, just today, feel powerful enough to build something better. That night, as they settle to sleep, the hearth still holds a small ember of warmth. No words are spoken, no anxieties voiced, just soft breathing, the comfort of blankets wrapped around bodies and hearts. And in that quiet peace, hope grows. Tomorrow comes, a quiet promise beyond this room. The next day opens with a smell so rare, so glorious, so fundamentally not despair. It actually makes Thomas pause at the threshold of consciousness. Bread. Actual, fresh bread. Not soaked, not scraped, not chewed on by time and rats and bad luck, but warm, golden, and somehow still intact. He sits up slowly, half dreaming, expecting the scent to disappear like most good things in life. But it lingers. Real, present. Forged by Agnes's hands and a bit of flour bartered from the neighbor's niece who may or may not be running a black market grain exchange out of her chicken coop. Agnes is already up, of course. She's wrapped in her work shawl, humming as she slices the bread with reverence. "You did it," Thomas says, voice raspy with sleep and awe. She shrugs. Flour was dry, oven was warm, even the fire behaved. She hands him a piece. It's not big, nothing ever is, but it's enough. Crispy crust, soft center, even a whisper of herbs. Thomas bites into it like someone who remembers hunger far too well. The children wake to the same smell. For once, they don't fight, grumble, or play rock straw rat for first bowl rights. They just appear at the table, wide-eyed and hopeful. It's a good start to the day, but there's work to be done. Always. Today's task, continue shaping the second bow in the Lord Cranwell batch. Dunning had been clear, no delays, no excuses. Thomas sharpens his knife, flexes the stave, and begins the slow, careful shaping. His muscles protest, his back creaks, but the work flows. The wood is clean, the tools are obedient, even the glue behaves. Alice joins him halfway through the morning, perching on the stool with a seriousness that would impress any guild master. She doesn't speak much, just watches, occasionally asking soft questions. "Why do you check the flex 3 times? To hear what the wood doesn't want me to know." She nods like that makes perfect sense. Meanwhile, Agnes is busy with another kind of crafting, weaving a patch blanket out of odds and ends so colorful it could distract a horse. She's muttering to herself about stitch tension and wool guilt, while Henry tries to help by tying knots that can only be described as crimes. Martha is outside with the neighbor's child, chasing what appears to be a chicken dressed in twine and leaf armor. They're calling it Sir Pex-a-Lot, No one questions this. Around midday, Agnes calls Thomas in from the bench. There's a visitor. He frowns. Visitors are rare. Rare usually means trouble. At the door stands a short man with ink-stained fingers and a ledger under his arm. He has the look of someone who enjoys the smell of old parchment more than people. Master Brewer, he says. Yes. I'm from the writ office. The Lord's accountant sent me. Thomas's stomach tightens. The bows you delivered last week, excellent, the man says, flipping a page. His lordship wants to increase the order. Thomas blinks. To how many? 15, before the harvest festival. That's ambitious. That's in 6 weeks, Thomas says. The man shrugs. Doable, yes? Yes, Agnes says, suddenly behind him. Very doable. Thomas glances at her. She meets his eyes. There's challenge in hers, then steps, but also faith. We'll manage, Thomas says. The man leaves a note of confirmation and disappears into the fog. 15 bows. It's more than he's ever handled in one contract. It's enough to be dangerous if it goes wrong, and life-changing if it goes right. That night, they talk logistics by the fire. How much yew do we have? Agnes asks. Enough for 5, maybe 6. Then we'll need to trade, or travel. I can ask old Tom, Thomas says. He knows the forest paths. And Robbie can help shape the base curves, if he's careful. Alice, curled up in the corner, speaks up. I can oil the finish. Agnes looks at her. You sure? She nods. If Papa shows me. He will, because this isn't just a job anymore. It's a family effort. A fight not just to live, but to grow, to build something. They end the night as they always do, tangled in blankets warmed by bodies and dreams and fading coals. Outside, the wind has shifted, not cruel now, just brisk, like it's hurrying to move things forward. Thomas stares at the rafters and wonders, is this what rising feels like? Not the absence of fear or work or struggle, but the steady, stubborn decision to keep shaping anyway. He closes his eyes. Tomorrow they begin again, but tonight they rest, together. Morning comes with a purpose, not the lazy kind that stretches across the floorboards with yawns and second thoughts, but the kind that grabs you by the collar and whispers, let's go. There are 15 bows to make, a workshop half-stocked, and a family that has, without ceremony, turned into a production crew. Thomas rises with the first bird call, though it's unclear if the bird is announcing dawn or simply upset about something. He pulls on his boots, still untrustworthy, shrugs into his work tunic and steps outside into air that smells like wet leaves and possibility. Robbie is waiting at the edge of the yard. You're early, Thomas says. You said to be, Robbie replies, blinking rapidly like a puppy who hasn't learned to control his limbs. They walk together toward the forest's edge, Robbie carrying the hatchet like it might bite him, Thomas with a coil of rope and a plan. Today, they're foraging for you. Not the best quality, perhaps, but if you know how to pick it, even a scraggly branch can sing. The forest isn't far, but it feels like stepping out of the world and into something older. The trees here are quiet in that heavy, respectful way, like they've seen too much to waste time rustling without cause. Thomas shows Robbie how to judge the bend, where to check for heartwood, how to whisper to a tree without waking its anger. Robbie mostly nods and pokes things. They work for hours. By midday, they've selected 3 good candidates. Not perfect, but worthy. Thomas marks them for cutting. He gives Robbie the hatchet, watches his stance. Small cuts, he says. Let the wood go. Don't fight it. Robbie tries. He's awkward but determined. By the 3rd tree, his rhythm improves. They haul the branches back to town bundled in rope, scratched and breathless. Robbie is smiling. You did well, Thomas says. Robbie beams like he's been knighted. At home, Agnes and the girls have turned the house into an impromptu factory. Alice is polishing bowstrings, stretching and drying them with the seriousness of a tax collector. Martha is sorting scraps of leather by color and chew resistance. Henry has appointed himself quality control and is currently licking one of the handle wrappings. Thomas raises an eyebrow. Don't ask, Agnes says. They eat together. Barley stew, dense bread, a bit of dried apple someone had hidden in a sock drawer last winter. It's simple, but it tastes like fuel. Afterward, Thomas sets up a second workstation just for Robbie. The boy watches his every move, occasionally copying them with endearing clumsiness. You ever think about joining the guild? Thomas asks. Robbie blinks. Could I? Not yet, but maybe one day. Robbie looks like he might float out of his own boots. The afternoon stretches into golden light. Agnes hums as she threads leather grips. The children rotate jobs with minimal disaster. Even the glue behaves, drying faster than usual, either a miracle or sheer fear of Agnes's stare. By evening, they have 2 bows shaped and another in the press. It's not fast, but it's progress. Thomas leans against the doorframe, watching his family. He sees Agnes working a worn strip of leather between her palms, her hands stained with oil. He sees Alice coiling thread, her tongue sticking out in concentration. He sees Martha tracing lines on a bit of scrap wood and Henry dramatically announcing, "This one's bendy." He looks at Robbie, sanding the edge of a stave, his cheeks flushed, his hands trembling just a little. And he thinks, this isn't just labor, this is legacy. Not the grand, noble kind written into books, but the kind built out of patience, shared effort, and splinters. The kind that grows in quiet homes on noisy streets. That night, they light an extra candle, not for light, but for mood. Agnes insists. Martha claims it's for the blessing of strong bows. Alice says it's so the rats don't trip in the dark. Thomas just watches the flame flicker. It dances across the boughs, leaning in the corner, casting tall shadows, warrior shapes, defender shapes. He smiles softly. They are building more than tools. They are building their way forward. Together. Morning seeps into the world with a pale promise. The street smells damp and honest, the kind of smell that comes when mud has had a few days to settle. Inside the Brewer household, a golden hush reigns, a fragile calm, like a soap bubble before gravity finds it. Thomas wakes before the sun, not on purpose. Cold floors and guilt make waking easy these days, but there's a purpose in his bones. 6 bows in progress, the 7th waiting, 15 still to go, family depending on him. He slips into the workshop corner, donning his defiant stare and a tunic that's been patched so often it's almost art. Agnes has already set out tools. Alice is carefully arranging leather scraps. Martha stands on a stool, leaning over the next stave, her small fingers tracing the grain. Henry bangs on a wooden block, mimicking a blacksmith with an enthusiasm they secretly wish he had for chores. Thomas breathes it in. A family workshop. It could crumble tomorrow, but today it stands. Thomas begins with the first stave for Lord Cranwell's batch. He shaves the curve to perfection, whispering to the wood. Curve, bend, speak softly. The knife flakes off curls of pale yew, each one a sign of progress. The stave flexes. It sings under his touch. Alice helps hold it steady, eyes wide. She offers Thomas a cloth to wipe shavings. He smiles at her. A shared victory. Next, he inspects the glue. There's less now. Maud's gift is dwindling. He voices the fear aloud. Agnes freezes, counting drops of glue like a miser with gold. She nods and sends Alice to fetch more. Thomas works blind to time, lost in rhythm. He flexes the bow again, smooth, balanced, alive. Agnes has woven bread into the day. Warm loaves, burnt-edged but generous. The smell makes Thomas pause. They eat together, nourishing stews spiced with mint, hearty bread, and hope. Before they eat, they hand Bishopswood, Robbie's yew-cut friend, a share. He's become part of the crew, as Italian as they come in this little workshop. After lunch, Robbie returns with 4 more dye-wood staves, forked and rough. Thomas nods. Good, you're learning. The boy grins and dives into cleaning them. Afternoon growth. Agnes teaches Martha how to wrap grips. The girl threads leather strips and winningly grumbles about twisted seams. Perfection, mother, Agnes urges, guiding her hand. Alice tapes shafts with thread while Henry drools over scraps. Quality control once again. Thomas shapes stave number 3. Road noise comes in far off. Carts, hammers, a woman singing badly about hay. He lets it wash over him. It's life, not chaos. He stops often to flex the stave, then resumes, then flexes again. Time distills. Evening. By late afternoon, they've finished 3 bows. 2 stand in the press, still drying. 10 remain, 12 if they're lucky. Thomas inspects each new bow, running his fingers over the grain. Agnes nods. Robbie sighs and sorts kindling. Alice washes tools. Martha dusts the bench. Henry eats the leftover breadcrumb fragments with gusto. They gather scraps of leather and bits of glue and bubble-warmed broth. Every inch of the workshop smells of wood and oil and effort. A moment of reflection. Thomas steps out for fresh air. He touches the yew staves leaning against the wall outside. Dust motes float in the sunlight. He breathes deeply, feeling his heart settle. Agnes steps beside him. She puts her hand in his. She doesn't speak. No need. They stand quietly side by side. Nightfall. Candles flicker around the workshop. Shadows dance on the bows like armored giants. Thomas dips a brush into oil and applies a final sheen to the third bow. Alice helps. Temperature low, oil dries slowly in this workshop, but it shines golden in the candlelight. Martha hums as she tightens the twine wraps. Robbie holds the bow steady. Thomas taps it softly and listens. Sound matters. Agnes stands behind them, silent sentinel, support and warmth in one. Henry yawns and curls into Agnes's skirt. They eat in shifts, small stew bowls, scraps of bread, herbs stirred into warm water. It's simple, but it tastes like belonging. Agnes passes around onion broth. Thomas notices she saved the leafy sprigs. Flavor cost, but choice made. Children chatter in soft tones. Alice recites a poem she's been working on. Martha tells a tall tale about a wooden goose that saved a village. Henry demands a full spoonful of whatever is left. They laugh. Quiet, contented. End of day. Afterwards, they gather around the hearth again. Everyone's tired, bones and hearts both, but they circle like creatures relieved to be whole. Thomas records the day's work. 3 bows shaped, 1 bread loaf, children engaged, glue rationed. Agnes writes in ledger form on scraps. He looks at them, his maid family, built from patience and splinters and hope. He thinks, tomorrow, we do this again. Together, together. He leans back against the wall. Everyone drifts to sleep. Agnes first, her breathing soft and regular, then the girls, then Henry, then Robbie, curled beside their door for warmth, then Thomas, smiling at the ceiling, bare wood strided with candle wax and dreams. Outside, the night is quiet. The workshop holds them safe. Their work continues, even in sleep. Dawn doesn't so much arrive as it creeps in, like a polite guest unsure if it's too early. A thin stripe of gold slices across the floorboards, chasing away the cold with all the enthusiasm of an aging candle. The Brewer household begins to stir, not with alarm, but with purpose. 15 bows. 6 down, 9 to go. Thomas swings his legs over the side of the bed, flexing his fingers. His hands ache, not sharply, but with the dull, persistent hum of someone who's earned every blister. He stands slowly, joints muttering their usual complaints, and steps into the day like it's a challenge he's willing to meet, but not without a cup of hot water and a glare. Agnes is already at the hearth, coaxing the fire back to life with the kind of determination usually reserved for battlefields or market haggling. Her hair is tied back, apron already smudged with flour, and the pot beside her bubbles with something that smells like hope and boiled roots. Morning, she says without looking up. Thomas replies in kind, reaching for the drying rack. 3 bowstrings hang like delicate vipers, coiled, oiled, and ready. Outside, the town mumbles awake. A cart rumbles past. A rooster screams its morning existential crisis. The neighbor's goat adds its opinion. Henry stirs in the corner, grumbles, then rolls over dramatically. By the time the workshop bench is cleared, the whole family is in motion. Alice hands Thomas the first stave, her fingers already ink-stained from tagging it. Robbie follows behind, carrying the draw knife like it's a sword he's just been knighted with. Ready? Thomas asks. Robbie nods. Absolutely. Then trips on the step and nearly decapitates a broom. They start the day's carving. The wood is stubborn, knotted in places, reluctant to be shaped. Thomas works slowly, adjusting, shaving, testing. Robbie watches every move, mimicking the stance, the grip, the flex of the fingers. Agnes pops her head in. We've got company. Thomas looks up, confused. Visitors? At this hour? At this hour? It's Maud, again, this time with a cloth-wrapped package and a suspicious glint in her eye. Heard you're still short on glue, she says. Had some old fish bladder lying around. Don't ask why. Thomas doesn't. The glue smells like a crime scene, but it's strong, sticky, and, more importantly, free. Thank you, he says. Maud shrugs. If you get rich, remember who gave you stinky salvation. She leaves in a gust of personality and the faint scent of mackerel. By midday, bow number 7 is nearly done. Number 8 is in rough form, number 9 marked for shaping. Alice oils the finished bows while Martha sorts wrappings. Henry has now declared himself Lord Bowyer and demands everyone call him Your Craftiness. No one argues. That evening, Agnes sits with the ledger, calculating. If we finish on schedule, she murmurs, we might be able to buy charcoal for winter, or boots, or, she pauses, eyes flicking to the children, maybe both. Thomas leans over her shoulder. We'll finish. She doesn't reply, but her hand squeezes his. They eat in shifts again. The stew is thinner than yesterday, but no one complains. Alice tells a riddle. Martha makes up a word. Henry tries to fit an entire crust in his mouth. Thomas watches them and thinks, Not long ago, this was survival. Now it's something more, a rhythm, a system, a life. He kisses Agnes's forehead. Tomorrow they shape bow 10, and the world keeps turning. Dawn arrives with a soft light that filters through the warped wooden shutters, dust motes dancing gently in its glow. Inside the brewer house, there's a hint of bustle, quiet, purposeful movements that feel almost ritual. It all begins again. Thomas is already at the bench, rubbing his hands together to chase away the chill. His eyes drop to the 7th bough, standing smooth and finished. Number 8 waits in rough form. 9 and 10 lie bare, but hopeful. There's a rhythm here now, the kind you only find after hours of repetition and purpose. Agnes slips in with a steaming pot of thin barley porridge. The aroma is modest, a whisper of nourishment, but it wakes everyone more gently than any rooster could. "Morning," she says, setting bowls one by one. She catches Thomas's eye and gives him a small nod of encouragement. Today, that means more than she knows. The children stir sleepily in their shared corner. Henry stretches and grumbles about the light. Alice drags herself upright and rubs her eyes, already alert. Martha sits up, clutching her rag doll as if she hasn't moved all night. She managed to sleep without coughing, and tonight is another small victory. They eat together. The silence is companionable, filled with the promise of work ahead rather than dread of what's to come. Thomas winds his fingers around the knife handle and lifts number 8 stave. "Let's begin," he says softly. Morning focus. Thomas shaves the stave following the grain, each stroke steady and deliberate. The wood curls away. There's a momentary silence in the room that comes when the wood meets a master's hand. It's a shared exhale between craftsman and creation. Alice holds a bowl to catch shavings, glancing up with pride. Robbie watches over her shoulder, his own eyes trained on each movement. Agnes organizes tools, rubbing oil into staves, storing twine, keeping chaos at arm's length. Within the quiet, the workshop hums, not with noise, but with activity, together, yet focused. Midday challenge. By midday heat, the 4th bough is nearly finished, the 5th and 6th curves shaped. Number 7 is oiled, hanging to dry. Numbers 8 and 9 are being formed. Number 10 awaits the first cut. Agnes brings lunch. Barley broth with onion and a pinch of salt. It tastes better than it should. Good broth does that. They eat standing around the bench. Conversations are minimal. How's the 5th bending? Oil's thick enough? Glue holding? Strong as whole grief, Thomas jokes, managing a small grin. Alice laughs softly. I like strong. Martha hums happily while Robbie smooths out a stave edge. Henry, determined not to miss anything, clings to a wood shaving and examines it as if it holds the secrets of the universe. Afternoon effort. In the heat of the afternoon, the wooden block sends a rhythm into the workshop as Thomas hammers in knocks on number 4. Robbie follows with delicate touches under Thomas's watchful eye. Agnes works on the leather grips, wrapping, stitching, and tightening until each feels snug and sturdy. She passes finished grips to Thomas, who fits them and tests each bow with a careful flex. Gentle arcs blossom in the staves under his hands, silent proof of progress. Number 8 is complete. Number 9 is half done. Number 10 is taking initial shape. They don't pause even when backs ache or fingers smart. They keep going. Evening reflection. As twilight edges in, the workshop begins to quiet. Number 11 and 12 are now underway. The house feels tight with productivity. Boughs line the walls, glowing golden in the fading light. Thomas sets tools aside with precision, stains of glue, wood, and oil glinting on their surfaces. He steps outside briefly, breathing in the cool evening air. It smells of damp earth and fields beyond the wall, life beyond their walls. Agnes follows him, pulling Robbie in on her other side. Alice and Martha bring out a small bowl of leftover broth. Henry, perched on a step, claps for his father. You did it, Henry whispers, eyes shining. Thomas kneels, hugging him quickly. We did it. Nighttime gathering. That night, they gather in the small space around the hearth. The stove holds a single ember, but it's enough. Agnes passes around bowls of lukewarm broth. They eat in comfortable silence at first, then laughter trickles in. Alice recites a rhyme she made about boughs that bend but never break. Martha retells the day in small declarations. I counted 5, then 6, then 7. Henry conducts a makeshift inspect the boughs ceremony, demanding each be flexed once more. And Thomas, so tired his body aches in places he forgot existed, listens. He glances at Agnes and sees the same mixture of pride and exhaustion he feels. This is what they built today. Not just boughs, but really something deeper. Agnes rests her head on his shoulder, quietly proud. Thomas looks at his family, at the boughs leaning in neat rows, and realizes maybe, just maybe, they're more than surviving. They're forging meaning from splinters and sweat. He squeezes Agnes's hand, and as the children drift asleep, the girls yawning, Henry finally quiet, Thomas closes his eyes. The sound in the room softens, the hearth embers glow. 9 bows down, 6 to go. Tomorrow will come, and with it, the next step toward hope. Dawn colors the sky in pale gray blue, as if it too is holding its breath. Inside the Brewer home, the rhythm of routine hums again, and for the first time in a long while, it feels reliable. 9 bows are lined up like quiet warriors awaiting their fate. 6 remain, each with its own promise and pressure. Morning pulse. Thomas is already bent over the bench by first light, carving the 11th bow's curves with deliberate care. His movements are precise, practiced, the result of days on end of repetition and refinement. He listens as the yew wood sighs beneath his knife, the shavings falling into the bowl Alice holds. Alice has learned not just to scoop them, but to appreciate the sound. She smiles whenever a particularly elegant curl drops in, as if it's a compliment to Father's work. Behind her, Robbie smooths yesterday's bow while kneeling, his youth unchanged, but his confidence deepening. Agnes emerges from the hearth's corner with a pot of barley tea scented with mint. She pauses to watch them. 3 down, she whispers to Thomas. He nods, his jaw set, his eyes flicking only briefly before returning to the wood. Midday tension. By noon, bows 11 and 12 are well underway. Number 13 is rough-hewn, 14 is marked, and 15 waits in outline. The tension in the room is palpable, not anxiety, but focus, like the world has temporarily paused and giving them space to create. Agnes places bowls of thin broth at intervals, each filled with careful portions. They eat together in shifts, letting silent concentration rule the air, save for the faint swoosh of sawdust and the creak of wood. Oil? Thomas's voice cracks the hush. Alice passes the brush. He applies oil to bow 9. It gleams softly, a promise of finished work soon to come. Robbie adjusts knot grooves on bow 10. Agnes threads more leather. Martha readies splints of glue-soaked cloth for drying curves. Henry follows them around, a tiny shadow perfecting nothing but lifting spirits. This space, alive with purpose, is theirs. Afternoon surge, the sunlight strengthens, bathing the workshop in gold. From time to time, a faint breeze carries in the smells of the nearby tallow works and fresh bread baking at the baker's, reminders that life continues. Thomas stands back to assess work. Bows 1 through 9 hold sleek symmetry. 10 through 13 stand half-formed. He flexes number 12. It responds perfectly. He glances at Agnes. She nods. Then, wordlessly, he moves to the press with the 11th and 12th bows, setting them carefully. The process is almost ritual by now. Press, inspect, oil, press again. Practice, repetition, refinement. Alice checks the lineup, confirming all bows are aligned evenly. She steps back, satisfaction shining in her eyes. Robbie watches the tension. Martha hums a soft tune of counting. Henry approves by adorable babble. Evening grace, as dusk settles, the final push begins. Bow 14 enters the shaping stage. Number 15 waits for the first shave. The 12-15 day is always the hardest. It's a test of endurance as much as skill. Hands ache, backs creak, spirits strain under the weight of expectation. Agnes senses the fatigue. She places a mug of warm mint tea on the bench and lays a hand on Thomas's shoulder. Nearly there, she says. He nods, takes a sip. The warmth floods him, awakens him. He flexes his fingers and returns to the wood. Family strength. After dinner, stew enriched with broth and seasoning, Agnes gathers everyone by the bench. Before bed, she begins, we inspect. Thomas tests bows 1 through 9 once more, nods. They are sturdy, smooth, reliable. Alice and Robbie stand on either side, faces serious, beaming. Martha carries a single candle. The flame flickers but steady. Henry stands tall, well tall for him, and beams too. They don't speak. They don't need to. The bows say it all. Later, tucked into bed, Thomas writes again in his ledger. 12 bows finished, 3 shaping in progress. Food stocks stable, family healthy, spirits high. Agnes lies beside him. He squeezes her hand quietly. I didn't think we could reach 12, she smiles sleepily. Tonight we did, he nods. Tomorrow, 15. Outside, the world turns. Inside, they rest. It's the final stretch, the kind where every step feels heavier, not from doubt, but from the sheer weight of nearly there. 15 bows, 12 finished, 13 shaped, 14 ready, and bow 15, that elusive final stave, still untouched. The finish line glows in the distance, but Thomas knows better than to look away now. It's always the last step that trips you. The morning air is heavier than usual, laced with the scent of damp leaves and old smoke. The village feels quiet, like it knows something important is about to be completed. Inside the Brewer home, however, quiet is not the word. "Where's the scraper?" Alice yells. "It's under the glue bowl." "No, it's not. That's the small one." "I licked the small one," Henry chimes in helpfully. Agnes sighs, brushing her hair back with the kind of elegance only achievable when surrounded by drying leather and oat crumbs. "It's near the hearth. Don't lick tools." The chaos isn't frustrating. It's familiar. It means everyone's working. Thomas smiles softly as he lifts bow 13. Its shape is nearly perfect, just a few more adjustments. Robbie stands nearby, arms ready. He's earned his spot, his hands less shaky, his questions sharper. He watches Thomas work, mimicking his movements with a precision that's no longer clumsy, just new. Agnes, already weaving the final leather strips, catches Thomas's glance. "We're going to finish," she says. He nods, though his hand keeps working. "If the wood holds." "It will," she replies. Lunch is sparse, just barley and dried root mash, but no one complains. There's a focus in the air that replaces hunger. As they eat, Thomas runs his fingers across the rough edge of bow 14. He can feel the tension locked inside. One wrong flex and it could crack. But it doesn't. Not yet. He presses it gently into the curve press, with Agnes steadying the ends. The wood groans, but holds. Everyone exhales. "Two to go," Robbie says. "Don't say it like that," Alice scolds. "You'll jinx it." Thomas half smiles. "We don't jinx, we test." "Still," Agnes murmurs, "touch wood." They all do, lightly, quickly, like a superstition inherited from old gods. Afternoon tension, bow 15 begins. Thomas holds the final stave like a relic. It's slightly warped, older than the others, but if handled right, it'll hold. It has to. He makes the first cut. The knife glides. He breathes. An hour in, the first curve is shaped. Another hour, the stave begins to sing, a faint wooden hum when flexed, the kind only you can make. Robbie helps brace. Alice sands the tip. Martha brushes oil into the leather grips, humming her now traditional finishing song. Henry naps on a pile of wood shavings, dreaming of bows, soup, or possibly dragons. The final bow begins to resemble its siblings. Not quite there, but close. Evening completion. As dusk arrives, so does the moment. 15 bows, all standing upright in the press and drying rack. Thomas inspects each with a reverence usually reserved for saints or tax relief. Each bow gleams with oil, each grip is wound tight, each string hums when plucked. "Done?" Agnes asks. He runs his hand along bow 15. "Done." Alice claps. Robbie lets out a cheer that startles Henry awake. Martha spins in place and proclaims the house officially magical. Thomas doesn't speak. He just sits down, for the first time all day, and closes his eyes. Agnes places a bowl of stew in front of him. Real stew, with bits of dried meat. Henry calls it festival food. They eat by firelight, the bows standing silent around them like a wooden guard. Night reflection. Later, after the children have drifted to sleep, after even Robbie has curled into his corner bedroll, Thomas and Agnes sit side by side near the hearth. 15 bows, no accidents, no shortages, no breakdowns. Thomas leans back against the wall, his muscles sore but his heart strangely light. "We did it," he says. Agnes leans her head on his shoulder. "You did it," she says. "We helped." He chuckles softly. "We built this." And as the fire dwindles to embers, they sit in silence, surrounded by the evidence of their effort. 15 perfect bows, forged from splinters, sweat, and stubbornness. Tomorrow, they'll deliver. But tonight, they rest. Thank you. The next morning breaks slowly. Golden light filters through the warped shutters, as if hesitant to disturb the warmth that's bloomed inside the Brewer household. The air feels softer, gentler, less crowded with worry. After all they've built, 15 bows, a family tight around each other, and a moment of rest, today they move forward. But for once, they step with patience. Morning of renewal. Thomas wakes to the smell of baking bread. Not rolls this time, but loaves with crusts thick enough to crack walnuts. Agnes, her cheeks brushed by an early blush of flour, hums softly as she adjusts the oven's coals. The scent is light, comforting, and real. a benchmark of something better becoming every day. He slides into the kitchen, nodding once, a wordless thank you, and settles at the table with a fresh slice. It's crisp, chewy, with just enough herb to remind him why they bother to live well. Henry is already seated, trying to scoop up crumbs against the odds. Alice joins, her hair still tousled, but her eyes bright. Martha appears through the door, clutching her doll, breakfast-bound and merry. They eat slowly, bread, a thin broth, and a richness of spirit that no tool or coin could buy. For once, they start the day as people, not warriors against survival. Plans and possibilities. After breakfast, they gather near the hearth with the morning's flame dancing low but steady. "We have silver?" So Agnes says, softly but with authority. She sorts coins, payment for the bows, including the bonus. Their width confirms it's enough to buy charcoal, herbs, and a small bolt of cloth, possibly a loose pair of new tunics for the children come winter. Thomas lays a firm hand on her shoulder. "Let's make lists." Alice pulls out a scrap of parchment. Martha sets her doll by their feet. Henry lingers with a crumb-laced finger. They each say what matters: warmth, clothing, seeds for spring, and maybe, just maybe, one luxury. Agnes smiles, Thomas smiles back. In this kind of planning, they are richer than kings. Mid-morning task, Thomas steps outside, leaning on the bench tools. He watches Robbie practicing with a leftover stave. The boy whittles with focus, but also with ease, not fear. He's come a long way. Thomas calls him over. "Ready for next step?" Robbie's grin lights the yard. "Teach me how to fix a break." Together, they gather the 3 extra bows, the bonus pieces, and bring them to Master Dunning's doorstep without fanfare. Dunning's door opens with a grunt of recognition. "Extra bows," Thomas says. Dunning nods, steps aside. "No problem," he mutters. "I'll sort it." Robbie notices the bow's surface is honey gold in morning sunlight. He stands by, proud and silent. Thomas places his hand on Robbie's shoulder. "Step up," he whispers. The boy nods, voice small. "Sir." They leave without payment. This time, apprentices don't collect coin. But Robbie carries something heavier, the understanding that trust and honor follow more than silver. Noon at the market, Agnes leads a small expedition, Alice in tow and Henry swaddled in her shawl. They head to the market to exchange their silver for goods, shoes, charcoal, cloth. They bargain gently, proudly. Sellers watch them with surprise. A family with dignity, coins still jingling rather than scraping bottom. Alice picks a mint sprig. Martha settles on pale thread for patching Henry's tunic. Agnes chooses a bolt of coarse wool in a warm, earthy tone. Henry steals a tiny loaf from the baker's tray, widely forgiven when confronted with wide-eyed innocence. They walk home slower, as if the day can't be rushed. Every step reminds them of what they earned. Not just bows and silver, but belonging. Afternoon at the bench. With fresh supplies at hand, Thomas returns to his corner. But not for more bows today. He carves another piece of wood, a simple yew staff, thicker than a bow, meant not for war, but for walking. He's talked about selling staves next winter. This is the prototype. Alice aids him, passing sandpaper, oiling sections. Robbie watches, waiting for the moment he'll be handed carving tools. They work slowly, gently, the pace of a household no longer under siege. Agnes stitches cloth pieces into blankets, calling her work warming the future. The children hum laughter through chores as if they're discovering joy for the first time. Evening unity. As dusk approaches, they gather around the hearth, staves and blankets stacked beside them. Stew bubbles again, richer, thicker, slowly boiling into memory. Agnes stands and lifts her wooden serving spoon. "One toast," she says. They raise mugs of barley tea. Henry waves, spilling some. Alice smiles sideways, Martha beams, Robbie stands at attention, and Thomas meets everyone's eyes. "To this," Agnes says, voice firm and softened by muscle-won pride, "to our life and to the road ahead." They sip, the fire snaps. It's more than warmth, it's a shield against doubt. Before sleep, after dishes and bedtime rituals, the house quiets except for breath and occasional wood crackles. Thomas walks through each room. The girl's corner, Henry's corner, his own. He checks blankets, smooths stray hairs, each child sleeps safe. He returns to the workshop, empty, but lit by candle. He runs his fingers along the final staff, paints a curl of oil onto wood, admiring its smooth form. Then Agnes appears, a shawl thrown over her shoulders. They stand together in that space, their home sense glowing around them. He asks quietly, "Contenaz?" And ready. He squeezes her hand. "Tomorrow, new path." They blow out the candle. Nighttime promise. In bed, Thomas lies awake a moment, then turns to Agnes. Ever thought we'd live like this? She whispers, not really, but we do. He exhales, their breath sinks. Outside, no taxman's knock, no cough, no debt, just night. Inside, they dream of steps, staves to sell, winter warmed, children safe. They sleep, anchored by hope. A pale dawn seeps through the shutters, carrying the faint promise of a new routine. Today feels different, not because the chores have changed, but because the chores now have meaning. There's a rhythm to their days, like a pulse grounded in choice rather than necessity. Morning resolve. Thomas wakes early, reaching for the staff beside his bed. It's smooth under his hand, heavier than he expected, embodying purpose rather than survival. Agnes slides out from beside him, the hush between them thick with possibility. The children are still asleep, a gift of morning peace they haven't experienced in ages. Thomas steps into the kitchen to find Agnes at the hearth, preparing porridge with oats they bartered from the market. The scent of oats and mint drifts like sunrise. He offers a quiet nod. She smiles, sensing his gratitude without words. They've settled into small rituals that speak louder than talk. The rise of dough, the stretch of wood, the sharing of quiet mornings. A day with all the pieces. After breakfast, they gather in the workshop. Today isn't about orders. It's about shaping something new together. Thomas lifts the U staff from the bench. Alice and Martha form a semicircle, eager faces waiting for their turn. Robbie stands in respectful readiness. Thomas hands the staff to Alice. Sand here, he says. She brushes off the surface with care, her fingers smoothing the grain. Martha oiled the wood yesterday. Now she rubs a rag along the handle, her motions deliberate. Robbie takes over when the girls finish. He scores delicate patterns at the top, his small hands steady and reverent. Thomas smiles, watching him begin to shape more than wood. Self-confidence, skill, belonging. Agnes stitches leather strips, belt loops for the staff, her stitches even and neat. She pauses to glance around the room, 5 figures at work, not out of fear, but out of choice. Midday intentions. The sun climbs high. Lunch is simple, broth laced with herbs, olive oil scraped from a jar, and bread warmed from the oven. They sit around the bench, chairs pulled close, sharing bites and conversation. It's easy now, this talking, gentle encouragement, laughter at small jokes, quiet dreams about selling staves come winter. Henry scurries between them with a wooden model fish, offering it around like a token. They each smile and say, thank you, turning his playful offering into a gift. The fish is a part of their creative assembly, a connection to crafting and heart. Afternoon outreach. After lunch, Thomas steps outside with the staff and Agnes. They walk down the lane toward the small woodland beyond the eastern wall. The goal is to source bark for better staff finishes and maybe gather wild herbs for winter. Alice and Martha accompany them, buckets in hand. The girls gasped as they sniffed the fresh, warm spring air. Robbie trails behind, clutching the staff, proud owner of something they created. At the edge of the woods, Thomas demonstrates how to take bark without harming the tree. Small patches, vertical strips, careful detachment. Alice and Martha follow suit, their movements precise. Robbie finds herbs, mint, and thyme, while Agnes collects dry moss for insulation later. On the walk home, they carry their spoils like pilgrims bringing sacred finds. The staff rests across Thomas's shoulder. The girls cradle buckets of bark. Robbie grips his herbs with determination. Henry carries the wooden fish. They move slowly, savoring the journey not out of fatigue, but gratitude. Evening assembly. In the workshop, they assemble what they've collected. Agnes dries herbs on a rack. Alice collects bark for staff grip. Martha dries moss. Robbie sands the staff final touches, while Thomas polishes it with soft cloth and finishes it with linseed oil. By nightfall, the staff graces the corner, finished, smooth, patterned, warm. Next to it, jars of herbs, dozens of bark strips, a coil of green-tinted drying twine. Tools are set aside, dust swept, embers glowing softly. They gather around the hearth and share a warm bowl of herb-savvy broth. Conversation flows, plans for winter, ideas for staves, ideas for more families to help, dreaming within reach. Before rest, after tucking in the children, Thomas and Agnes sit by the hearth. The night is quiet, the embers sigh like old friends. Thomas holds the staff before him, turning the top gently. Agnes rests her head on his shoulder. We made more than bows, she says softly. He breathes in. We built a home. She squeezes his hand, and a future. He closes his eyes, feeling the staff across his chest, his family asleep beyond. They're ready now, for winter, for orders, for hope wrapped in wood and love, and with that they sleep. Dawn sneaks in quietly, brushing the wooden shutters with pale light. Today, the Brewer household wakes not to survival but to purpose, an unfamiliar but welcome companion. The staff stands proudly beside the boughs, evidence of their new beginning. They're no longer just surviving, they're shaping something better. Morning ritual. Thomas climbs out of bed, muscles protesting but heart steady. Agnes is already at the hearth, stirring a pot of porridge made from oats they bartered weeks ago. A gentle scent of mint drifts through the room, a reminder of renewal. On the table lies a stack of cloth, wool, and leather scraps, materials for their next project. He offers a soft nod. She returns it with a quiet smile. They've perfected this silent morning greeting, a testament to how far they've come. It means we're here. We've done it, and we're ready. Family workshop. After breakfast, they gather in the workshop corner. Thomas brings out the staff, lined up alongside the bows, all drying in the morning light. Today's work isn't under pressure. No guild demands, no taxmen looming. It's driven by promise. Alice runs her fingers over the staff, admiring the carved patterns. Robbie stands ready with sandpaper. Martha watches, eager to help but still mastering her tools. Henry toddles around, humming softly and clutching his wooden fish, now a beloved companion. Thomas assigns small tasks. Rob passes sandpaper, Alice oils the leather grip, Martha cleans away shavings, Henry hands them scrap pieces to keep paws of shadows away. Agnes stitches scrap cloth into small storage pouches for tools. The hum in the room is calm but steady, the rhythm of a family thriving. Midday sharing. As noon approaches, Agnes calls a break. They gather at the bench with bowls of barley broth, chunks of fresh bread, and the fallen aroma of baking that lingers in their memory. They sit shoulder to shoulder, warmth flowing through them. They talk softly. Thomas shares a plan for selling staves at winter fairs. Alice imagines making small bow replicas as toys. Robbie dreams of becoming an apprentice in Dunning's workshop someday. Martha pipes up that Henry should be dubbed Master of Quality. Henry giggles and tries to bite a crust just because he can. It's not a feast, but it tastes like a celebration of being alive. Afternoon harvest. The afternoon brings a new task, gathering wild herbs for winter salves and staff finishes. The five of them walk through the village, buckets, baskets, and cloth sacks in hand. They pause at the baker's stall to barter bread for herbs. They greet old Tom on the way, who admires their staff and nods in approval. At the woodland edge, Thomas shows them how to identify mint, chamomile, and sage. Alice loves picking chamomile blossoms. Their petals feel like sunshine. Robbie finds thyme growing under a rock. Martha collects soft moss. Henry chases a butterfly, collapsing in laughter when it escapes him. When they return, baskets brimming with greenery and blossoms, the world seems large but welcoming. Evening production. Back at home, they set to work assembling tomorrow's wares. Thomas begins shaping the edges of the staff's handle while Alice and Martha wrap leather grips. Agnes mills dried herbs into pouches, labeling each with its healing promise. Robbie creates small samples from wood offcuts, toy bows. Henry organizes these pieces like a proud general. The workshop smells like earth, leather, and possibility. The light dims and candle flames flicker, illuminating faces full of concentration and contentment. No deadlines, no fear. Just hands moving, minds crafting, hearts believing, nightly reflection. As the evening deepens, they gather by the hearth. Warm broth in bowls, fresh bread torn but not crumbled. Henry pulls in close. Alice reads aloud, an old rhyme she's made up about boughs that bend but never break. Martha retells how she named all their herbs. Robbie shows his toy bows and proudly declares them ready for sale. Thomas listens, quietly overwhelmed. Agnes rests her head on his shoulder. This, she says softly, this is home. He kisses her head, and this is us. Before sleep later, tucked in bed, Thomas lies awake for just a moment, feeling Agnes's breath. He thinks of tomorrow, tools to organize, herbs to package, wood to sand, but it's no longer a burden, it's a gift. He imagines the first staff sold at a winter fair, the family working together under a stall's lantern. He pictures Alice's toys, Robbie learning under Dunning's guidance, Martha's moss pillows warming children, Henry, now hale, chasing shadows in morning light. He closes his eyes. In the quiet, he whispers, "We did it." And they sleep. Morning arrives on soft feet, the kind that linger just a moment longer, as if hesitant to disturb the comfort woven through the Brewer household. Sunlight filters in, touching the staff and bows with a gentle glow, reminders that their hard-won progress has begun to settle into their lives. Morning joy, Thomas wakes to birdsong and warmth, a rare luxury where once lay the chill of survival. He reaches out for Agnes's hand, and they share a quiet smile across the bed. No words needed. It's enough to know they're here, together, and still moving forward. He slips into the kitchen, where Agnes is kneading dough for fresh rolls. The air already smells of baking, a subtle celebration. She brightens at his presence. They fall into their usual routine, shared and effortless. A nod, a glance, a moment of mutual understanding. Workshop harmony. After breakfast, they gather by the bench. The staff stands with carved elegance. The boughs rest in golden rows, drying and waiting for sale. Around them swirl small tasks that speak of new purpose, not mere survival. Alice organizes herbs and seeds into labeled sachets for healing, she writes. Robbie sands the staff's top, smoothing ridges, his hands steady and sure. Martha threads leather cord, creating wrist wraps meant for the staff's loop. Henry arranges wood shavings into a tidy pile, hums swirling notes of childhood. Thomas oversees guiding, teaching the craft of attention, not just labor. Agnes stitches up a small pouch for carrying seeds, her stitches neat and thoughtful. Their unity hums through the space, built from days of shared effort, now blossoming into shared purpose. Midday conversation. At midday, they gather over bread and broth. The table is quiet at first, comfortable, unhurried. Then conversation breaks out. Alice dreams aloud about making decorative bows for markets. Robbie wonders if he can become a full apprentice. Martha wants to plant more herbs in every window. Henry simply grins and squeaks, happy to be heard. Thomas and Agnes exchange looks. Gratitude, pride, hope. They speak of planning stock for winter fairs, stall setup, future tools. Their planning is quiet ambition, fueled not by desperation, but by curiosity and promise. Afternoon outreach. In the afternoon, the family returns to the woodland, this time to plant seeds and thank the trees. They carry shovels and water from home, prepared to nurture the land that has sustained them. Thomas teaches Alice to plant chamomile seeds. Robbie digs small holes for mint. Agnes encourages Martha to scatter wildflower seeds. Henry giggles as he sprinkles leftover oats for the birds. They linger in the shade, sharing stories, laughter, small triumphs. There are no contracts today, no guild demands, just presence in the world, giving back as much as they take. Evening collaboration. Back home, they gather again in the workshop. The children set tables. Herbs here, seed pouches there. Thomas fits leather wrist loops on the staff. Robbie attaches a simple carving at the top, a leaf motif from Martha's suggestion. Agnes measures and marks prices. They package staff and sample seed kits for fairs, labeling each with care, placing them gently in lined boxes. Each item is a testament to what they've built. Not just tools, but stories, future, home. When the last item is packed, they step back and look at their work. Staff, boughs, seed kits, ready to travel, to sell, to return with more. Nightly reflection. That night, after tucking the children in, Thomas and Agnes sit together by the hearth. Their home feels different now, expanded, rooted, living. He squeezes her hand. We planted seeds today, she replies, and hope for more than winter. They share a look both tender and bold. Their path is no longer just about surviving, but flourishing. They blot out the candle. Before sleep. In bed, Thomas lies awake just a moment longer, feeling the quiet hush of home that wasn't there before. They didn't just make bows, they mapped a future. Not perfect, but theirs. He whispers to Agnes, "Tomorrow we build this." She answers with a half-murmured yes, and they sleep. Dawn rises like a whisper, soft and unhurried. Light slips through the warped shutters, brushing across the staff and the line of finished bows, each one a silent testament not just to survival, but to a decision, to create, to endure, and finally, to live. Thomas wakes slowly, not from urgency, but habit. His body, still aching from weeks of labor, creaks slightly as he stretches, but there is no dread in his chest. Not today. He ties his tunic, washes his face, and steps into the main room. Agnes is already there. She stands by the hearth, folding dough into little rolls, her hands working with practiced rhythm. She doesn't look up, but her voice is warm. "Which rolls should we bring to the market today?" Thomas leans against the doorframe, smiling. The ones that sell fast and taste expensive. She laughs, a small sound, but real. Soon, the whole family is gathered around the long table. The morning light shines across their work. Boughs polished to a soft gleam, strings coiled perfectly, grips tight and ready. The staff stands tall near the doorway, oiled and etched with a leaf pattern at the top, Robbie's handiwork. Alice sorts sachets of herbs into small bundles, carefully labeled in neat handwriting, for bruises, for sleep, for coughs. Martha places each into little baskets lined with scraps of cloth. Henry, ever the helper, sniffs each herb pouch and nods solemnly as if giving final approval. Robbie stands silently beside the first bough he ever shaped. It's not perfect, but it's his. He knows now that making things isn't about perfection. It's about patience, repetition, purpose. Thomas tightens the string on bow 15 one last time. He doesn't think about taxes or hunger or the cough that haunted them. He thinks about today, a market stall, a wooden sign, and curious hands lifting something his family made. The journey to market. They load the cart, the same one borrowed from old Tom weeks ago. It creaks, but it holds. Into it go the boughs, the staff, the herb sachets, a small bundle of fresh rolls, and a jar of mint tea. They walk together, slow but steady, no longer escaping something, now heading towards something. Villagers pass and nod. Off to the fair, brewer. Good luck today, Agnes. Alice blushes when a girl her age compliments her herb bundles. Robbie walks taller. Even Henry waves at a rooster like he's royalty. Brewer and family, a new beginning. At the edge of the market square, beneath a canvas tent stitched by Agnes herself, Thomas plants the staff upright. From its top hangs a small wooden sign, carved with care. Brewer and family, bowyers, healers, makers of good. The table beneath it holds their offerings. 10 long bows, each with a unique grain and grip. The staff, tall, elegant, etched with leaves. Herb kits labeled with uses and instructions. Toy bows, shaped from leftover wood. Curious customers arrive in waves. A burly man tests a bow, nods in approval. A mother asks which herbs might ease her son's fever. A young boy reaches out for a toy bow, holding it like a knight's sword. Thomas explains the tension of yew wood. Agnes recommends tea for sleep. Robbie silently watches every sale, eyes wide with pride. Alice beams when someone compliments her handwriting. They sell, and more than that, they connect. A market meal. By noon, the rush calms. The family eats on a bench behind the stall, rolls with soft cheese, warm broth in clay mugs. They lean into each other's laughter. I sold 2 sachets, Martha says proudly, and someone asked about the staff, Robbie adds shyly. Thomas raises an eyebrow. And you sold it? Robbie shakes his head. Not yet. I want to keep the first one, at least until we make another. Thomas nods, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. That's a good choice. They sit together, chewing slowly, warm in each other's presence. The walk home. By day's end, the cart is lighter. They've sold 10 of 15 bows, nearly every herb kit, and 2 toy bows. The staff remains, Robbie's keepsake, but the silver coins in Agnes's pouch speak clearly. It was their most profitable day ever. As they walk home, the sun begins to dip low. The air smells of roasted nuts and wood smoke. The children hum. Agnes hums back, and Thomas, pushing the cart, lets his shoulders relax, really relax. They are not just full from food or coin, they are full from proof they can live. The hearth once more. Back home the fire is warm, the table is cleared, the coins are counted, the boughs that remain are oiled and wrapped. Plans for tomorrow are discussed. Another staff, more sachets, more toy bows. But mostly they sit, the kind of sitting that doesn't ask for anything more. Henry falls asleep on the floor. Alice strokes his hair, Robbie sharpens a pencil to mark down ideas. Martha braids thread into bracelets. Agnes watches them all with quiet eyes. Thomas looks at her and whispers, "We made it." She leans into him, and now we start. A new life begins. That night, before sleep takes him, Thomas lies in bed and listens to the steady breaths around him, the creak of wood, the crackle of the fire, no coughs, no hunger, no dread, just life, real, ordinary, honest life. He whispers to no one in particular, "Tomorrow we build again." And he sleeps. And now, dear listener, our story draws to a close, for now. We've walked through cold mornings and fire-lit nights, carved boughs from stubborn yew, and watched a family do the impossible. Not just survive, but grow, build, and believe again. But before you dim the lights completely and let sleep carry you away, I'd love to hear from you. What part of this journey resonated most with you? Was it the quiet resilience of Thomas, the fierce tenderness of Agnes, or perhaps the simple wonder of Henry and his wooden fish? Let me know in the comments. Seriously, I read them all. Your thoughts help shape the stories still to come. And if you enjoyed spending your evenings with the Brewer family, if their world became a little part of yours, then please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps us keep the fire lit for many more stories to come. So for now, thank you for listening. Take care of yourself, be kind, and remember, sometimes the smallest acts, like tying a bowstring or sharing bread, are what hold the world together. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next story.